So that kind of wraps up where we are in the program. I hope you've been writing down some questions that we'll be able to consider and some comments that we'll be able to take up. We got Bobby and Sid are ready to pick up some questions, and the answers that I give in the presentation you've received so far, by the way, is not just Gary's presentation or Gary's answers. These are things that we've talked about as a committee and as a board over the last 9 months. And so whatever I give you in the way of an answer, if I give it to you, remember it's in a draft form. You know, the program's still draft, but it's where we are today, and it's where we see this going. And so if you'd hand in whatever you got to Bobby and Sid, we'll start answering questions. Is that fair enough? Anybody got anything that we can tackle? Everybody looks like they're real hesitant. Man, this is not the IRS. You're not signing up for an audit here, okay? Andy, would you write it down so it'll be part of our record?
Would I write it down and hand it to you?
Yeah, we'd like it handed in if you would, please. We'd really like to do that. Yeah, we want to be able to show all the questions that we considered as we go through. You know, if you're a government entity, one of the things you do is you take comment on everything that you do if it's important. We're required to take comment when we adopt our rules, when we adopt our management plan, when we adopt our desired future conditions. So we'd like to have your questions and comments today. Oh, you want to look at the map again? Please, Doug, while we're doing that, if you could put that map back up there. Here, Sid, you got a couple I can start on?
Everybody waiting. Exactly
Sir?
Exactly what kind of, what will the landowner have to do with the land? In other words, you get paid $5 or $6 or whatever it is. So what can you do with the land? I mean, you still use it for cattle and...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're not speaking for your surface property. That's a good question, but you're supposed to write this down.
You want to explain groundwater?
Sure.
So it's just the groundwater.
Is that a well or is that a tank or is that a...
It's water in the ground, but it's out of a well, yes. Yeah, groundwater. When we talk about groundwater, we're not talking about surface water like in a stock pond. When you define groundwater, it's water that percolates below the surface. That's the best. You know, it moves below the surface. Just kind of as a FYI, if you have a surface water pond, and people always cringe when I say this because we're in Texas and we like to own everything on our place, right? But you know, we found out something over the last 7 or 8 years because of the oil industry and fracking. I've got Angus cattle. If you need to buy an Angus bull, give me, anyway. I've got Angus cattle, but all of my ponds that are out there that have water in them, they actually belong to the state of Texas. They're exempt from me getting a permit from them because I'm watering livestock and they're below a certain size. If you don't believe me, go dig a big hole in the ground and let it fill up with water and see if TCEQ doesn't come and see you, because they will. And so there's a limit on what you can actually use that water for. You can irrigate out of it, you can water your cattle, but you can't sell it out of your pond to frack an oil well, see? So that actually matters. But the question, let's get back to the question, what is groundwater? No, it's not the water in your ponds. It's the water that percolates under the ground that you would produce with a well. And that's an important question. All right, how many acres are in the aquifer? And how many are currently leased to exporting water companies? So there's most of the water rights that have been leased in our area are by Metropolitan Water now. There was a company earlier on, Brazos Valley Water Alliance, that was also involved in that sort of thing. Best we can tell, based on maps that we have access to and individuals, somewhere around 100,000 acres is probably leased right now, give or take, somewhere between 100 and 120. It's a rough estimate, but the overall size of the aquifer, the footprint of the aquifer is, what is it, Bobby, 850,000 acres, something like that? Yeah. So we got an exact number, but that gives you an idea. About 15-20% probably leased up, maybe a little bit more. So, good question. Fees collected from where? So if you come and get a permit from the groundwater district, you pay fees based on the amount that's permitted. If it's for agriculture use, we don't collect fees. You're irrigating, we don't collect fees. The most we could collect for irrigation is like 25 cents an acre foot. Well, that's not a lot. Well, we never wanted to put the burden on the local folks anyway. And so currently, if you hold an export permit in the district, you pay 7.5 cents per 1,000 gallons that's permitted for, just to hold that permit. And so you also pay a penny, and everyone that pays a production fee, industrial users like Alcoa, Luminant, municipal users like the City of Rockdale, Southwest Milam Water Supply, they also pay Marlowe, Minerva. They pay 1 penny per 1,000 gallons that's permitted to produce groundwater. And that funds the budget of the district. Our current budget is on the website. My next question, if I were you, was what do you do with that money now? Well, we fund a groundwater conservation grant of about $1.3 million a year. All of our local water utilities at some point in our district have participated in that one way or the other. And we figure that probably plays into a reduced fee for folks who have a water meter somewhere in our district that receives service from a water supply corporation or a city. At some point, about 90% of the people over the aquifer actually would be serviced by someone that does that. So that's what we do with our fees. We do a lot of science research. We also actually drill monitor wells where we need one if there's not one there that a landowner will let us use. So a lot of things we do that. What do we get paid for? What's our responsibility? So your responsibility is to, you keep using your surface, it's yours. The groundwater is still yours. Based on the term, that's going to come back to you. So the question is, what are we getting paid for? You're getting paid to make a commitment to leave your water in the ground for the term of your commitment, whether it's 5 years or 20 years or if we do something longer. You're being rewarded for that. We thought that it was important to try and encourage conservation. And there are some folks that have told us on the survey, I'll do it for nothing. Well, that's awesome. That really is. That's great. If that's what you want to do, that you can take what we give you and do something else with it. Give it to your favorite charity or something. That's up to you. But there's also some folks that have filled out the survey and said, I'm on fixed income, and every little bit helps. And so they're interested in that as well. But your responsibility is just to abide by the commitment that you make, not to use it for permitted uses during the period of time. Leave it in the Conservancy. What else could Post Oak Savannah do with the money that will be spent on the program? One of the things that we hear very often, we could collect up to 17 cents per thousand on a combination of export fees and production fees. Those fees I talked about a while ago. But as a government entity, you can't just collect the money and sit on it. And so there's a challenge to be able to actually spend as much as we could collect. And we've been ridiculed from time to time, gosh, you guys ought to collect more. Believe me, it's harder than you think to spend the amount of money that we could possibly collect. And so that's part of the reason that we came up with this new idea, a new way to include landowners. Because we've also had some folks say, hey, I'd like to be rewarded because I'm not producing mine, and that leaves some in the aquifer. And so that's part of the impetus that got this program being considered by the advisory committee and the way that we move forward. So there's always this balance as a government entity. You're limited to what you can collect based on what you can spend in your budget. Your city cannot raise taxes more than a certain amount, and they can't raise it if they don't need it to spend on their budget. And we're no different. The county's the same way. So I hope that answered. Is this really an attempt to slow down or stop people from selling groundwater rights to developers? No, it just gives people an opportunity. Well, yeah, I guess it could be. I guess it could be. What we see, the way we're set up, if you want to produce a large amount of water, you have to go out and acquire water rights from folks. You're allowed to produce 2 acre-feet per acre per year. all of the land that's included in that and the water rights have to be contiguous. Then we also have spacing requirements. You have to control everything within a certain spacing. But then we added this extra 2 acre-feet per acre per year limitation and restriction to force developers to go and acquire more property rights for more people. Well, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So if it has to be contiguous and someone's looking at doing another large-scale project in the near, in the future somewhere, well, if a lot of folks sign up for this, they can't participate in that. And so, yes, it would be a deterrent. I'm not sure who wrote it, but that's a great question. It would be a deterrent to being able to put together a large-scale project in the future. And even though we don't show modeling results that are a great concern from current projects, we know that at some point we'll make some management changes, and those folks who hold those current permits will probably have to go out and start acquiring additional property rights. And then, maybe in 20, 30, 40 years, it starts to be an encumbrance to them too. And so it is an opportunity for folks to participate in providing a balance, if you will, to some of the folks who have chosen to lease, and they have that right, to have chosen to lease their water rights. So that was a good question. I hope that answered that. When will the fees go up? I think we kind of covered that in the program. As we go through each year's sign-ups, we'll see what is necessary for a year and a half after that, and we'll adjust fees accordingly so that we can fund the program. Is this compatible with Metropolitan Water Lease? Gosh, I don't have a Metropolitan Water Lease, so you'd have to talk to somebody that does. I know what we hear. We hear things like $3 an acre a year on reservation fees. So if that's true, well then I think you can draw your own correlation there to what, how this compares, $5 to $6 versus $3. If you're in production, then I don't know what it looks like for you. Again, I'm not a leaseholder. I don't know how to answer that. Maybe. Do we have any more questions? I know I've kind of gone through these. Yes, sir.
I've got one.
You're not writing them down for me. We wanted.
We own property in Bastrop County. That's not in the...
Yeah, we don't have any regulatory authority over that groundwater conservation district. We work conjunctively with them in groundwater management area 12, but that's Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District, and so they do their own conservation programs. That's a good question. But sure, you can always share that with them and see if they're interested in starting something like that. Guys, I have to tell you, we're the middle district of 5 in our groundwater management area. And it's not a reflection on them, but our directors seem to have always been about a half a step ahead of what a lot of other folks are doing. And we seem to have always been leading the way with new ideas, innovative ways to account for the balance that's required of our district when we're considering property rights. I mean, you got to consider the rights of the people who want to produce and the rights of the people who don't. And that's a tough balance, but we've always been an innovative leader there, and I see us doing the same thing here. Some of our neighboring districts are following along with some of the ways that we've chosen to manage the shallow parts of our aquifers, and so they may choose to follow along with this too. That's a great idea. Anybody else got any questions that we please, if you would, please hand them in. They become part of the record, and nobody's going to look this up and go and compare this handwriting and track you down. That's not what we're trying to do here, but we just want this to be part of the record to show that we considered some of these things, and if we get enough questions that are asked, maybe it affects what the advisory committee does with part of the program. And so that's an important point. So
let me ask you a follow-up. Just so could an average person that lives in the city of Rockville that doesn't have any property that might come to play with, should they be worried that, oh gosh, enough people out there want to enter this program, and they're going to have to collect more money on fees, so the city of Rockville or Southwest Milan can now charge greater fees, and so my water bill is going to go up.
No.
Pay these people out here.
That's a great question. So let's look at that for a second. For every penny that we charge, that's about $3 an acre foot. An acre foot's about 300 326,000 gallons. So if you're paying so much 1,000 gallons or however your water bills are, gosh, $3 for 300,000 gallons is 3 cents or 4 cents. Or so I mean, even if we tripled the fees, would it make your water bill go up 15 cents a month or something? I don't know. That'd be up to them. But we're not talking about breaking the bank here, no. And because they're not, let's look at the lion's share of our fees are paid by folks who intend to export water. And they knew that going in. When our enabling legislation was written, it was written with the intent, right on the front page, it says to regulate the export of groundwater out of these districts. And we're one of the 5 districts that was created in 2001 in that enabling legislation. And so that was the intent all along, and that's why we can adjust those fees. That's why the export folks are willing to pay a larger share of the balance and tote the note, so to speak. That's a great question, though. Thank you. Anyone else? But please write that down and hand it in, because see, now at some point they're going to decide, do we just raise export fees only, or do we also raise a little bit of production? Well, now we got a question that says, hey, I'm worried about my, so write that down and hand that in, please. Andy, you had.
What about a map of Burleson County? That just shows my.
If you're in Burleson County, you're in. It's pretty simple. Burleson County's down here, and so you're on that side. Anything on that side of the blue? Where'd you go there? Oh, you're gonna go to the other map. I know what you're doing. So yeah. Here's Milam. Here's Burleson. There's that what was a blue line a while ago. And so everything in Burleson County qualifies. If you're in Burleson County, that's easy. Milam County, a little trickier. Anybody else? Y'all had some great questions. These are important.
I got another question. It's not related to this, but do you think there's going to be any restrictions placed on the pooling side for the water?
So we get to regulate production, and we get to look at water levels. But as far as a lease agreement that you have with one of those companies, you have to look at that. It's all in the lease, and we don't have anything to do with that. That's a civil matter between the lessor and the lessee. So if you think you are in a pool or you're not, that's up to them.
I'm talking about from the state side, like
putting
limits on all.
Yeah.
Certain sizes.
Currently that's a groundwater district. Yeah. Oil and gas is handled by the Texas Railroad Commission. Oil and gas doesn't move. Groundwater does, and so they've left all of that up to groundwater conservation districts. So that the state's stepping in. The legislature can do anything every 2 years, but they've kept hands off for 50 or 60 years now on groundwater, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But they could change that. Yes, ma'am.
So basically, the only responsibility that a landowner would be signing up for with this is not to sell their water to some other producer to produce for other purposes.
Or to permit it for a permitted use yourself. Irrigation requires a permit. If you want to raise cotton or corn, you come get a permit from the district. Well, that would negate this. Or selling it to someone else would negate it. Yes, ma'am. But other than that, no. We all had some good questions. Is there any other questions? You can see we've got a lot in place, but we need some input to finish it out. If you got anything at all you would offer, we would really like to have a comment from you. It would be very helpful.
There's a place on the online survey that you can put comments there. So if you think about it on the way home.
Yeah, if you think about an additional comment, hand in one tonight, and if you think of another one later, you can always email it to us or go online. Well, is that all y'all's questions? Y'all were easy, golly. No, we really do appreciate y'all being here. Look, if you've got a group of people that we can come and sit down with and have a discussion about anything, we would love to meet with you. We go to Lions clubs, Rotary clubs. We go to Sunday school classes, but not during Sunday school, okay? We do. We'll meet with anybody. We've met with a a home-based gardening group. So, I mean, we're willing to come and sit down. Please let us know, okay? Well, thank y'all again. Please turn in your surveys before you go. We appreciate you very much.